Good morning and welcome to Light Reflections from First Friends. We are glad you have chosen to join us for this virtual worship service and hope you find it beneficial to your spiritual journey. We consider this an abbreviated version of our in-person meeting for worship for those wishing to join us from a distance. If this is your first time joining us, First Friends is a thriving, progressive Quaker meeting in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. We consider ourselves a loving, inclusive, joyous gathering of people seeking to know truth under the leadership of God's Spirit. All are welcome, no matter race, age, cultural background, sexual orientation and identity, marital status, physical and mental ability, family structure, or economic circumstance. Our hope is that through this worship experience, you will discover our faith community is unlike any other, where silent meditation is as important as the spoken word, where we emphasize the importance of one's personal encounter with the divine, and where we seek to support one another as we discover truth together. Now we invite you to center down and enter this virtual worship space with us.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Let's sing that next verse now. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars and their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow, blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to Light Reflections. Today we continue our exploration of the Beatitudes with Matthew 5:7 from the New Revised Standard Version. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Someone mentioned early on in this sermon series that I should have skipped to today's Beatitude earlier since mercy was in the headlines. I'll be honest, mercy is rarely in our headlines, yet lately it has become front and center in almost every conversation I have in some manner. What sparked the headlines was ironically a sermon, which drew me in as well, since rarely do sermons these days make the headlines. The sermon was by Episcopal Bishop Marianne Edgar Buddy. In her message, she talked about unity, humility, and ended with a final plea, especially to our newly elected president, to have mercy. Here are her closing words asking for mercy. I want to share them in helping us understand our beatitude for today. Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. As you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. And in the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are transgender children in both Republican and Democratic families who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in our poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shift in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches, mosques, and synagogues, gurdwara, and temples. Have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away. Help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were once strangers in this land. So may God grant us all the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, speak the truth in love, and walk humbly with one another and our God for the good of all people of this nation and the world. This was the plea for mercy that lit up our headlines. Not only was it a plea for mercy, but it was about as biblical as you can get in its presentation. The bishop's application of mercy, having mercy and being merciful, was right on. In its basic form, mercy simply means having compassion for another. The term is often used of God in the way he relates to his people. In the Old Testament, the basic word is hesed, which is a very rich and profound word to describe God's steadfast love, compassion, grace, and mercy. God's mercy could also be described as compassion in action, helping the weak and rescuing those who are suffering. Jesus points out that mercy is not mere pity, like when we give or help others to make ourselves feel good or look better before others. Pity is self-serving charity, whereas mercy is selfless compassion. Folks, this makes mercy monumental to our faith as Quakers and as Christians. Someone has described it like this: grace is God giving you good that you don't deserve. Mercy is God not giving you bad that you do deserve. Therefore, we all stand in great need of both God's grace and mercy, as well as being bearers of that grace and mercy to our neighbors. I find it illuminating that in Jesus' day, the moral fabric of the nation was abysmal. Roman government leaders ruled by force. The political insiders justified corruption based on common practices of the day. In order to get what they needed or wanted, people operated by might, not mercy. And likewise, the religious leaders were entrenched in prideful power plays to obtain position rather than providing service to the people. As I continue to study the Beatitudes, I cannot believe how much Jesus' day mirrors our own. So when Jesus models mercy and teaches mercy, it catches the attention of many, very similar to Bishop Buddy. That's why it seems only appropriate for mercy to show up in Jesus' stump speech as well as be a key to his eightfold path. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is pointing out that the religious and political culture of his day did not prioritize mercy, as people frequently displayed anger and sought revenge. There's still a lot of anger and revenge in our world. Actually, studies are showing an increase in both anger and revenge in our world currently. One of the ways we combat the growth of anger and revenge in our personal lives and in our society is by focusing on mercy and its attributes. In contrast to the anger and revenge, Jesus taught that peacemaking, forgiveness, reconciliation, and love should take preeminence. Praying for your persecutors and enemies reflected belonging to a different and divine kingdom rather than an earthly kingdom. This is emphasized when Jesus says in Matthew 5:44-47, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same?" Mercy is a momentously different way of living. It goes beyond loving just those who are easy to love and have mercy on. Jesus modeled this for us. He continually showed mercy to help others. For example, he helped a leper. He helped a paralyzed servant. He even helped Peter's mother-in-law and many others who were sick and oppressed. He extended mercy to the blind. Mercifully, he healed many people. A Canaanite woman's daughter who was demon oppressed, an epileptic boy, blind travelers, and countless others. John's gospel goes as far as to say endless libraries couldn't contain the books that could be written of Jesus' miracles of mercy. If we understand the Beatitudes, specifically this fifth one, then we must understand that mercy is not neutral. We cannot ride the middle for giving mercy to others. Either we are merciful or we are merciless. This is what Jesus, as well as the bishop, was getting at. And just like in Jesus' day, or with the bishop's words, people still struggle with having mercy. For example, I borrowed some examples from Dave Brown's website, Growing Godly Generations. Let's start by talking about spouses and families. Some spouses can drift relationally and begin despising each other over the littlest of issues, forgetting about why you disagree or argue, and never willing to apologize just because you don't want to appear weak. Some parents are quick-tempered and demand obedience rather than introducing their child to God's grace and forgiveness. Some grown children forget how much their parents have sacrificed to serve them and have grown entitled and merciless to every peculiar aspect of their parents. Or how about mercy and our neighbors? It's no accident where you live. God is calling you to live in your neighborhoods or community as salt and light to the people around you. We must learn how to meet our neighbors and reflect and display the mercy of God. Sometimes we can be downright mean to our neighbors, making jokes about them behind their backs, ignoring them, even speaking badly of them to other neighbors. Instead, we are looking for ways to grant them mercy. Please note that this includes all of our communities, work, social media, and any group that we are a part of. Or what about mercy in our meeting? Jesus frequently taught and even chastened the religious elite about understanding mercy. In 3 places in Matthew 9:13 and 12:7 and 23:23, Jesus emphasizes, "Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice." In fact, Jesus was harder on those who should know better than those who are ignorant and blatant sinners. 3 groups that are over and over emphasized by God in the scriptures are widows, orphans, and strangers or foreigners in the land. All were without help or hope in the cultural settings of the day. But God works with and through us to protect and to preserve the fragile and needy in our midst. Widows, those who are deeply grieved over love lost, need tangible care. Orphans, physically or spiritually, it's the church's role to equip and encourage physical, biological, adoptive, foster, and spiritual parents. Likewise, the church is to raise up supported, included, and loved people. Strangers and foreigners in the land are to be treated as our native born And we are to love them as we love ourselves. We're not to exploit or oppress the foreigner or mistreat them. And what about mercy to people who do not believe, deserve, or may not understand our mercy? God has chosen people like you and me to be a means for reflecting His mercy to our world, even or especially to those who may not believe they deserve or understand or desire our desire to have mercy on them. The Apostle Paul gives us a glimpse of the power of offering mercy to someone who does not deserve it by sharing his own experience. He exclaims, "I'm so grateful to Christ Jesus for making me adequate to do this work. He went out on a limb, entrusting me with this ministry. The only credentials I brought to it were violence and witch hunts and arrogance. But I was treated mercifully because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I was doing it against. Grace mixed with faith and love poured over me and into me, and all because of Jesus." Here's a word you can take to heart and depend on. Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners. I'm proof, public sinner number one, of someone who could never have made it apart from sheer mercy. And now He shows me off, evidence of His endless patience to those who were right on the edge of trusting Him forever. That was 1 Timothy 1:13-17 from the Message. Paul was won over by the patient, sheer mercy of Jesus. I wonder how many people we know who are just like Paul. They don't know or even want to know what they are doing. They don't know or even care who they're doing it against. They do not realize the damage they are doing to themselves or their neighbor. They do not see their arrogance. They don't realize their violence and witch hunts, trolling on Facebook, argumentative nature, ignorance of the full story, and how their own lack of mercy impacts their world. Imagine if you offered them patient mercy and their eyes opened as Paul's did. And we must not forget to reflect on those for ourselves. Am I aware and seeking to give and receive mercy? Peter speaks directly to you and me in 1 Peter 2:10-12. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. As a meeting or individually, our acts of mercy to our neighbors, to our widows, orphans, and strangers among us, to our transgender children and our siblings in the queer community, to our friends who voted differently than us, is God's mercy made manifest to a watching and struggling world offering hope. Folks, Jesus gives us this beatitude not to scream judgment at the world, but to spotlight both our calling and our need for God's eyes to see God within our neighbors, our family, and friends. While you and I stand in immeasurable need of God's mercy, God stands ready to bestow His mercy on us so that we can share that immeasurable mercy with our world. Now, let us take a moment to center down and enter waiting worship. I've prepared a couple of queries for us to ponder this morning. To whom have I withheld mercy? What is getting in the way? How might mercy address the anger and revenge in our world? And how is our meeting offering mercy to our community? Where might we offer more?
heaven came to rescue the lost. You called the sheep without a shepherd to leave their distress, for your streams of forgiveness and the shade of your rest. And with compassion for the hurting, you reached out your hand as the lame ran to meet you and the dead breathed again. You saw behind the eyes of sorrow and shared in our tears, heard the sigh of the weary, let the children draw near. What boundless love, what fathomless grace you have shown us, O God of compassion. Each day we live an offering of praise as we show to the world your compassion. How beautiful the feet that carry this gospel of peace to the fields of injustice and the valleys of need, to be a voice of hope and healing, to answer the cries of the hungry and helpless with the mercy of Christ. What boundless love, what fathomless grace you have shown us, O God of compassion. Each day we live an offering of praise as we show to the world your compassion.
We close this time of worship with a Quaker prayer. God, open our eyes and unstop our ears, that we may see your light and may hear your heartbeat, reflecting and resounding within our chests, in those of all our neighbors, near and far, in all creatures and plants, and in the ground we walk upon. When we finally are able to yield to the leading of your rhythm and flow, may we come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of you in all. Amen. Have a great week, friends.